So, I was casually watching an episode of Manben, a documentary featuring professional mangaka and their works. If you're curious as to why manga artists became famous and how they honed their skills, then I highly recommend you check the series out. It's on YouTube as well, but I don't know for how long. And if you're wondering why I'm recording like this, it's because this week is a very special episode. And it's also a one take series video such, and if I mess up, I'm gonna put a jump scare because Halloween. So anyway, I was watching an episode of Manben featuring Junji Ito and immediately became intrigued by his technique. His slow strokes and attention to small details contributed to a bigger, terrifying image. And as he drew this one single panel, Urasawa Naoki, the author of Monster, explains his observation that Junji Ito's female characters are quite attractive. The way he presented females in his manga were always in great detail. Glossy hair, flawless legs, a particular sense of fashion, excluding side characters who are usually not that good looking anyway. But Junji Ito's main female leads would always be shrouded in beauty, and it is an incredible contrast to his horrific and grotesque imagery of monsters, settings, and humans. And further evidence can be found in one of Junji Ito's most famous works, Tomie. To those unfamiliar with this title, it's about a gorgeous girl named Tomie and the mysterious and brutal occurrences surrounding her. And it all revolves around her beauty that men desire to have and women desire to be. Hers is a beauty to die for. Literally. Her excessive beauty always leads to her demise, but not her life. She resurrects again and again and again, flaunting her deathly aphrodisiac to anyone and everyone who approach her. A gory sight to behold at every page. Yet, despite that, the beauty of Tomie provides us eye candy to the readers, acting as an incentive while reading onward. And we can't seem to gaze away as both beauty and gore blend the canvas for horror. And it became apparent what exactly makes Junji Ito's way of displaying horror appealing, but also shows what makes Gore a work of beauty. Now, defining the word horror is not as simple as one might think. According to Noel Carroll in his book The Philosophy of Horror, there are two ways to define this genre. One would be the horror that hides under your bed as you sleep, and then there's the horror that can happen while you sleep. The one hiding in your bed, created by a person's perception, is called art horror, while those caused by natural means such as volcanic eruptions and kidnappings are called natural horror. For this video, I'm going to focus solely on art horror, but I may slide in a few examples of natural horror as well. Now, there are many factors that make horror attractive, but let's just focus on three. First, let's talk about the beauty of the victims, or the characters. Same thing, jump scare. When we think of horror, we think of fear. And what better way to present fear than have the character experience it? Most of the time, horror begins when a character comes into the presence of the unknown. A girl in a dark room, a man lost in a forest of spiders, a victim and a murderer exchanging glances. It's in the situations in which characters are secluded in an inevitable truth, and we begin to understand, for it is the transaction between the viewer and the media in which we create meaning. And it all comes to one conclusion, both for you and the character. You're afraid. Now, fiction does not explain a theme by itself, but a personified version of said theme. And if that theme is fear, then the characters must overcome it in order to reach the end of the dark tunnel, if one exists, with dogs barking outside. Yes, jump scare there, I don't really care anymore. Fear is emphasized even more when it's presented through the opposite spectrum. The reason why yellow is more emphasized in the black background than white. Opposites do not only diverge from one another, but they also complement each other, kind of like yin and yang. And no other trait can complement horror more perfectly than beauty. For while horror is in itself beautiful in the eyes of, the fear, another beauty tempts it. And seclusion of this trait drives fear even more. But who then might play the role of the victim? Who is this beauty in the gruesome? Well, why not a pure, beautiful girl? One who seems to be innocent and unaware of the dangers about to pounce from depths of darkness. Perhaps a little girl, once pure and happy, now tainted and shivering. Hell Girl, for example. Who knew a small girl has the power to bring people straight to hell? She is a personification of revenge presented through eerie visuals. Corpse Party is another. Both the game and the OVAs show young girls thrown into a world comparable to hell. Surrounded by grotesque materials, these once pure girls slowly lose their sanity. Jill Valentine of Resident Evil 3 is another contrast to a world ruled by zombies. The only difference from the previous examples is that Jill Valentine can fight. Now, Fatal Frame presents a helpless girl trapped in a town full of ghosts that are out to get her. And like Jill, she also has the power to fight back with the Camera Obscura. But just because they have the power to fight back doesn't mean they're invincible. And just because you can doesn't mean you're safe. Once an innocent small girl, Regan became the host for the devil in The Exorcist. The priest had the means to fight back, but it took some time until they were able to drive the evil away. And I could probably go on for days giving examples of how fear is incorporated in contemporary media, but one thing's for sure, beauty and horror could not be any more of a complement to each other. Now, let's talk about the beauty of the haunted, or in which case the setting. Now, one aspect of horror that most writers or artists ignore is the setting of the story. A dim-lit setting probably isn't gonna cut it. There needs to be more depth, more meaning to the setting, not just darkness. One method of incorporating fear into the setting is a feeling of isolation. If there is nothing around the character to aid him and all he has is himself, then it adds the feeling of loneliness. And even more if one is oblivious of the situation. And it's in the feeling of loneliness and ignorance that one can feel vulnerable to whatever lurks in the shadow. Amnesia is a good example of this. At the start of the game, the player does not know why he is placed in that situation. There is no one to guide the character other than whatever he can interact with, and the longer you stay in the darkness, the faster your sanity disappears. Silent Hill is another great example of this. While not focused on dark setting, the setting is still shrouded in mystery, and the darkness is replaced by deep fog, which makes it even harder to comprehend what could be hiding inside that fog. Yes, the setting brings forth a creepy factor in a horror media, but this factor can increase tenfold through its presentation. Now, presenting a story is crucial when determining how a certain media is scary. One can get scared of something as simple as a video recording of hikers getting lost in a mountain, others of a creepy face of a clown and staring into your soul. You know, those ones. Now, The Shining is presented in the most unnerving way possible. The framing of each scene is aesthetically positioned in a direction where the characters and settings would look creepier than they originally are. It doesn't have a dark atmosphere, but the way that the scenes are presented make it darker without actually being dark. Mononoke is another good example where dark atmosphere is almost non-existent, but its presentation is unnerving to the point that it's no different from a dark alley or a dark room. Good horror knows how to present itself in more ways than one, with unpredictable methods, because it is the mysterious and unexpected that truly brings out fear in the work of art. I messed up there. Jump scare, I guess. Now let's move on to the final segment, which is the beauty of the dead. Or the concept, doesn't matter. Now, every work of art begins as an idea, first and foremost. And this idea could either lure in the audience or bore them. And this is particularly true for horror media. If one comes up of a concept that looks too ridiculous, people might not be scared of it. Likewise, if it were too real, the audience would be skeptical. What makes horror work as an idea is its attachment to realism while also embracing the unknown. Uzumaki, another manga by Junji Ito, is about a town cursed by a spiral. Now, a spiral is something one sees and think, it's normal. But including the word curse makes all the difference. In this instance, the ordinary word spiral is now covered in mystery. And from there, the idea builds up to this horrific display of bodily and otherworldly horror. Now, The Grudge takes a simple approach to this. It started off as a rumor, then it builds up to a phenomenon that could happen to anyone at any time. Having the audience experience that, the anxiety that the entity is out there, ready to take you, is perhaps one of the greatest achievements of horror media. Or as I like to call it, lasting horror. Now, just one occurrence can spark into a dreadful memory if all the elements amalgamate. And that image of a character or a setting embody fear itself. Now, Jason of Friday the 13th and Freddy of The Nightmare of Elm Street are the closest models for this. But in order for them to lure you in, they first have to appeal to a certain desire. It can come in the form of treasure, dreams, or most commonly, sex. Now, Jason takes action whenever the natural act of sex occurs, while Freddy takes away the luxury of sweet dreams from his victims. Giving these characters a correlation to a setting, object, event, or another character makes said character embody the fear tides within it. A lot of RPG Maker games follow this idea, to be honest. Like, Witch's House has, the house. Mad Father has, the father. And Ib has, you guessed it already, paintings. So do a lot of anime, like give Higurashi series or Shiki, for example, both putting emphasis on setting and the characters. Now, once that idea is planted into the audience's minds, that's when fear truly wins. When despair wins against hope, evil triumphs over good, ending through tragedy rather than comedy. Much like how Stephen King's The Mist does it, but that video is going to be for another time. Or maybe next year, who knows. Conclusion. Yes, perhaps one of the greatest fears is the end of something. for it may never return. But you know what's even scarier? Not giving this video a like and not subscribing to his channel, so just do it right now, or I'll put a jump scare right now in the end. Also, go support trees, because it's scary without trees. There's no light to fire. Just do it now. And as always, this is vanilla, not the flavor, but just